So I had a question come in recently about hooks, and that question was, how often do you change out your hooks? Do you put a new one on every trip, or do you use the same hook for multiple trips? And I wanted to answer that in this video. So what it really comes down to is what kind of shape the hook is in. Is the hook weak? Is it rusted? Is the point dull? And there are some things that you want to look for when inspecting your hooks. This is something a lot of people sort of overlook, is actually inspecting your hooks when you do tie them on and if you do leave them on your line. Because what can happen is, first, let's talk about the dullness or the hook point. After a lot of fish, your hook point is going to start wearing down. Also, if you get snagged quite often, your hook point is going to start wearing down. And aside from it being dull, something a lot of people don't realize is the very tip of the hook, especially these needle point hooks. If you get it snagged on a rock or structure, or it bangs into something, that very end of the tip could break off or chip off. And then you just have a flat end of the hook there. And a lot of people may not see that visually, but they'll start missing fish and try to figure out what's going on. And that hook point is either dull or it's broken off. So definitely inspect that. And then the next thing that I like to inspect is the actual eye of the hook. A lot of people lose fish or have fish break off because of the eye. And what you want to look for is any signs of rust or corrosion on the eye, because when your line is on there, especially if you're using a loop knot or your knot may be a little bit loose and it's sliding around on the eye of the hook, what's going to happen is if there's any rust on there, if there's any corrosion, your line is going to start getting rubbed by that rust and that corrosion, and it's going to start wearing it out and your line's going to break. So I've had this happen before. I used a hook that had a rusty eye, went to go set the hook on a fish, and the line popped almost immediately where it was tied on. Wasn't a weak knot, because I saw the loop knot, the loop was actually broken in half. So it rubbed on that rust and corrosion and I lost that fish. So definitely be sure to inspect the hook point and also the eye where you tie on your line. Now, another thing I like to consider when it comes to, how often I'll change out my hooks. Let's say I hook into a really large fish and this hook actually bends. If it was to bend open or it was bent closed a little bit for whatever reason, bending that hook back and forth is going to weaken the hook. So I really don't want to use that hook again. If it does bend and I have to bend it back, I'll just put a new hook on. And also inspect for any signs of rust on the hook itself, the shank of the hook, the bend of the hook. Any sign of rust can be a weak point on the hook, and that could run the risk of that hook actually breaking in that area where it's rusted, because you really don't know how deep that rust would go through. Now, as I said before, I like to use these hooks as long as possible, really extend the life of them. Some of these hooks only come in a 3-pack, so I don't want to have to tie one on, a new one on every trip and toss the old one. So as far as some tips for extending the life of these hooks, whether it be, owner twist lock hooks or jig heads or circle hooks, or hooks that may be on your topwater or hard bait lures, at the end of the day, I will take them completely off of my line and take any lures that I have on there off of them as well, and then rinse them off with fresh water, and then just have a towel or something handy where you can actually dry them off and make sure they are completely dry before you put them back in your box. This hook right here, this one I've actually used, I think it's about 4 or 5 trips now, and it's still in great shape. You can see this one here. This is new out of the packaging, this hook here on this side. This one has been used multiple times, and you can see they are very clean. Both of them are very clean, very similar, and there's no rust on there. And you can tell this one's been used because of the color of the lead. One that's been used quite a bit, the lead's going to be darker, and the new one, the lead's going to look shiny. So just by taking care of those hooks, they can definitely be used multiple times. Don't have to toss them out after one trip, and you'll notice that there won't be any rust on them just by simply rinsing them off with fresh water and then making sure they are completely dry before you store them away. Now, one last tip to help extend the life of these hooks is, if at all possible, try to avoid actually using pliers to take the hook out of the fish's mouth. try to just use your hands if you can, or wrap some electrical tape or some type of duct tape or something around the tips of the pliers to grab the hook. Because what happens is when you grab the hook with bare pliers, bare steel on bare metal, it's going to scrape up the outer coating of that hook, which helps protect that hook. So once that coating gets scraped up, that bare metal is exposed and it will rust a lot quicker. So definitely keep that in mind. Try to avoid pliers, and if you can, try to wrap something around your pliers, or there may be some type of plier out there that does have a coating on it that will help from scraping up your hooks there. And the same thing holds true if you start catching a lot of fish. The fish is going to start wearing out the coating on that hook, and it will rust a lot quicker over time. So that's why, again, at the end of the day, just take your hooks off, take your lures off, rinse them off, pat them dry, and store them away.
If you are new to Salt Strong, we are the largest online fishing club for saltwater anglers, and we guarantee you two things. Number one, you'll start catching more fish in less time. And number two, you will save a ton of money on your favorite tackle and gear with discounts available exclusively for our members. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com and we'll see you there.
There's something about the water that'll give you peace, all by yourself or with your family. Live Salt Strong and wear the line today.